since the big boss, there seems to be a wave, a hot wave, in fact, of a star. Now let's stop about here. Is it that simple to become a star? Well, I can assure you it's not that simple. Also, I can tell you that as more Bruce Lee's films are shown, the physical skill as well, they will see the difference. For example, in The Way of the Dragon, my skill is matched with an American champion, Chuck Norris, who happens to be a 7-time winner of both the All-American Open and World Karate Champion, plus Wang Yanjik, the 7th degree Hapkido expert, which some audience have seen him in the film called Hapkido. Of course, it is only movie making, people will say, but I'm sure that the audience are not so speed, power, rhythm, coordination, versatilities, etc., etc.
I started training with my dad really as soon as I could walk. I mean, my dad was a really diligent trainer, and he always had people over at the house practicing.
My dad had a circle of students that were close to him, and so they were friends of our family. And one of those men, Danny Inosanto, continued to be my teacher, so it's kind of a nice unbroken line.
I have his books at home with all of his underlining and his notes in them, and it's fascinating to see where he drew his sources from, from what sources he drew. He's got books on Western fencing at home that he would use, on boxing. I remember he always used to say that you want to try and absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, and add what is essentially your own, and that was kind of his credo in creating Jeet Kune Do.
When people ask me the question in interviews generally what my style is, I usually say, well, my father created the art of Jeet Kune Do while he was alive, and I have been trained in that. Because it's simple to say that. However, I actually truly feel that it's a little bit too simple to say that, because Jeet Kune Do was my father's very personal expression of the martial arts. He intended it to kill a lot of sacred cows. So I always feel a little bit silly saying that I practice Jeet Kune Do, although I certainly have been trained in it. It would be more accurate to say that I practice my own interpretation of Jeet Kune Do, just as, frankly, everyone who practices Jeet Kune Do does, because that's what it was intended to be. Danny, my Sifu, always talks about teaching Jeet Kune Do concepts. In other words, teaching someone the concepts, a certain way of thinking behind the martial arts, as opposed to teaching them techniques. To me, that kind of illustrates the difference between giving someone a fish and teaching them how to fish. You know that old story, right? You can teach someone a certain block, and then they have that block. Or you can teach someone the concept that lies behind such a block, and then you have given them an entire area of thinking that they can grow and evolve in themselves. They can say, I see, so if that's the concept, then you could probably also do this, right? Yeah. And that's, I think, a lot of what lies behind Jeet Kune Do, and that is then dedicated to creating a really creative, free-form martial artist.
You see, actually, I do not teach, karate, because I do not believe in styles anymore. I mean, I do not believe that there is such thing as like Chinese way of fighting or the Japanese way of fighting or whatever way of fighting, because unless human beings have 3 arms and 4 legs, we will have a different form of fighting. But basically, we have only 2 hands and 2 feet.
Unless we have other group of beings on Earth that are structurally different from us, then there might be a different style of fight. Now, why is that? Because we have 2 hands and 2 legs now. The important thing is how can we use it to the maximum in terms of path, well, straight line, curved line, round lines. They might be slow, but depending on the circumstances, sometimes that might not be slow. And in terms of legs, you can kick up straight, same thing, right? Now, and after all that, then you ask yourself, how can you honestly express yourself at that moment? And being yourself, when you punch, you really want to punch. Not want to punch because trying to avoid not getting hit, but to really be in with it and express yourself. Now that is to me the most important thing, and that is how can I, in the process of learning how to use my body, to understand myself. Now the unfortunate thing is, now there's boxing, which use hands, judo, which is throwing. Now I'm not putting them down, mind you, but I'm saying one thing that is the bad thing, and that is, because of style, people are separated. They are not united together, because styles became law, man. But the original founder of the style started out with hypotheses. But now it has become the gospel truth. And people